This is the Entertainment Answer.
Anything that has to do with Texas, and I'm immediately engaged. What do you think about? Because I'm not sure if this film would have worked if it was like Accidental Kentuckian or Accidental Coloridian or whatever. But what is it about that Texas? What is it about that Texas flex that just sounds great when it's in a title?
Well, there's such a rich, long history of Texas films set in Texas, often shot in New Mexico or Arizona. That's why people think it's an arid desert even to this day, oddly enough. But there, I think the lore of Texas around the world, that sort of that cowboys and lifestyle still exists, is very appealing to many people. And even growing up here, I grew up here in Texas, and I've had the great pleasure of knowing these larger than life characters, and so it was very important to me that we honor them and we tell a truthful story. It's a comedy, it's a dramata. It's very much a cinematic story. It could only exist in movies, and we had great joy in telling it in that way. But yeah, we never wanted these characters to slip into caricatures. We never wanted to dishonor these people, because we've all known them growing up here. And I think larger than life characters are appealing. Larger than life actors are appealing to people, that they can live vicariously through these individuals. And so Thomas Hayden Church inhabits that role perfectly. He himself is a larger than life human being. He's just a magnificent, with his wit and his humor and his and the rest of the cast as well. And so, yes, it's very much a Texas story, but I wanted it. The goal, of course, is that it has universal themes that'll play, across the country and around the world. And for me, it was such a test when we went to Indianapolis to the Heartland Film Festival up there, and we had screened the movie in Texas, and of course the crowds went wild and they loved it. But I was like, okay, as a Midwestern, audience going to resonate with this movie as much as our as local audience, and they loved it. They laughed at every single joke except one, and they were crying and coming out with smiles on their faces. So I was like, okay, we've done our job. We've made a fine film that's going to appeal to people all across the country, regardless of it being such a Texas story.
Absolutely. And you mentioned Thomas Hayden Church, who plays Merle, and I think it would be for audiences everywhere because, I mean, I wouldn't call him an underdog story, but he's just a guy who's going through a hard time. And we've all been there. We're either in the middle of the hard time, or we've gotten through it, or we're about to get in it. So I think that's so relatable to audiences anywhere. And he does such a great job. And I love the balance that he does with young Rudy Pankow, who you brought in here. The balance that they have together, the chemistry of almost the yin and yang of when one's up, the other's down, and vice versa. Talk a
Yeah.
little bit about, because we love Thomas Hayden Church, but where did you find Rudy? How did you bring him into this fold?
Well, I really have to thank my son for that. My son, is a huge fan of Outer Banks, and so we were looking at that, so many young actors. And truthfully, I was looking. I've told Rudy this many times. I was looking for more, like a New Yorker, somebody that was even a bigger fish out of water. But my son, just every night at dinner, was like, "Dad, you got to watch Outer Banks. You got to see this young Rudy Pankow. He's so perfect. He'd be great in this role." And Rudy auditioned and was magnificent. And so and then he and Thomas got on the phone together, and there was a nice rapport. But it was really on day three where we had one of the most emotional scenes of the film. And typically, you wouldn't want to shoot that on day three. You want time for your actors to get to know each other before they have one of these really, really important moments. But it ended up serving us really well, because it bonded them as actors, and it formed a great trust that benefited the rest of the movie. And so much of the comedy in the film is just the two of them going for it. I like to run a set where it's a full collaboration. There are some scenes we're not going to change a line, but certainly if it involves comedy, go for it. Just let's just let those actors run, and let's see what kind of gold we get out of it. And of course, with Thomas Hayden Church and Rudy and Carrie Ann Moss, Bruce Stern, you're just going to get magic. And so it's your job as a director to just to keep that within the confines of the story. and they just did a fantastic job. And so, it's the old saying, 90% of directing is casting, and this, like, you couldn't have asked for a better cast.
Yeah, it worked out great. And I know a little bit about your background and some of the action films that you have worked on, and just creating the aspect of what the action is going to look like and how it's going to play out. And it's
Sure.
one thing to hold an audience's attention when you got a guy hanging on the side of a train going down the mountain. It's another thing to keep an audience engaged when it's just two men having a conversation in a kitchen about life. Talk a
Yes.
little bit about the director, because you mentioned a little bit about directing. What was your process of going into those sort of scenes, saying, here's how we're going to keep audiences engaged in something that's drama and not just full intense action?
Well, first and foremost, it's all about the screenplay. As Hitchcock said, it's story, story, story. Those are the three most important aspects of a film. And so, Cohen Wooten, the co-writer and producer, and Julie Denny, who wrote the original script, the three of us worked for a year and a half on the script. Because I always said, with a great script, we have the chance of getting great actors, and with great actors, we have the hope of making a really fine film. And I've learned from all the movies I've worked on, it all comes back to that screenplay. That's if you write an efficient film, that first is going to attract your talent, but also guide you in the process. You're going to run in you're not going to be overspending. You're not going to be wasting your time and resources, especially on an independent film when there's no time for reshoots. It all comes back to that screenplay. And so we spent so much time crafting it. And then the second stage is, or really the final stage, is the storyboarding. And so I storyboarded every single shot, in the film, as another process in bringing efficiency to it. But ultimately, it's all comes down to the performance. And so, as I come from the school of immense pre-planning. You storyboard it, you location scout it, you block the scenes, so that on the day you can be very flexible and listen to your actors and let them tell you how this scene should evolve organically. And that's the lessons I've learned from getting the opportunity to watch so many great filmmakers, like Terrence Malick and Spike Jonze and Ken Kwapis, and a lot of Christopher McQuarrie working with Tom Cruise, seeing how they operate. And it's all about pulling his, even on a giant tentpole movie like Mission, it's all about the emotion. How can we connect with the audience? And that's your job as a director, working with the actors to deliver on that. And it's not just the performance; it's also, what lenses are you choosing? How are you framing Irwin? In the beginning of the film, he's very alone, and so you're putting him at the far edge of frame with a big open, background behind him. And so, you take all these lessons from just watching cinema, and then having the incredible opportunity to work on all these movies and watch all these directors and watch all these actors working, and then just infuse that into your own work. But ultimately, it just comes down to story, story, story. That's what you're serving. Nothing can be shot because you think it looks cool. Nothing can be done unless it serves the story. And then that finally plays out in the editing as well. So that's the biggest lesson I've learned is it doesn't matter if it's a beautiful shot, like on Top Gun Maverick. You're not going to care about that final 45-minute action scene unless you care about the actors or the characters, that you are emotionally, as an audience, engaged with their journey. And that is also comes true on a independent film such as this. It's all about the characters and what they bring to the table. And then it's part of the journey if you can also then, paint them in a beautiful landscape.
Well, it worked great. Congrats to you and your crew, making Texas proud. I appreciate it. Good luck with the film. And Mark, I appreciate your time today, bud.
Man, really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
You bet. Have a good one.
Cheers.